radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. How you doing? It's Fade to Black. That's all right. Today's Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. Say it with me, Monica. Let's do this, man. Love it. All right. What a great week. Every week is great on Fade to Black. I've never said, oh man, but no, it's always a great week. And last night, Daryl Sims was with us. Tonight, we've got Lon Strickler back with us. Wednesday, Michael Brown is here, our paranormal world. And then Thursday is going to be our once a month AMA, AJA, Ask Me Anything. AJA, Ask Jimmy Anything. Again, I'll say that in the third person. That's the ego. Okay, should one reference themselves in the third person? I can't do it. I did it when I was when I did the session with Sarah Breskman Cosme, and having my whatever speak in the third person in my head and then out of my mouth like I wasn't in the room. That was bizarre. That was bizarre, and it was just flowing out. And so anyway, enough of that. Lon Strickler is back with us now. Lon and I were just talking right before the show, and I thought about this earlier today, and I brought it up to him. I was like, Lon, when was the last time you were on the show? And I was thinking about it, and he said, I think it was 7 years ago, and that just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense to have something like that go down, and it won't be 7 years next time around, Lon. I promise you that. Lon is with us tonight, and he's a great researcher. I've been a fan of his work for a very long time, and tonight I've framed the show, his latest research, and he mentioned this. We'll probably talk about it when I bring Lon on. Started just before his last appearance on Fade to Black, and my response to that is actually cool, because now we've got all of that research into Mothman and winged humanoids and what he's been working on. We get it all tonight with Lon. All right, so I'm going to get straight to it. I just want to mention 3 major events coming up between now and the end of the year, now and the end of November. And that's the Contact at Sea cruise to Alaska. That's coming up in 2 weeks. And that is September 6th through the 13th. The links for that are below. And then in October, I'm heading back over to Egypt with Billy and Elizabeth Carson. And that's October 3rd through the 14th. And then in November, it's Peru and Bolivia with Brian Forrester. I got an email from Brian earlier today. He is so excited about this trip. And again, there are links for everything below. Everything is sold out, but you can get on the waiting list for everything. If something cancels and something opens up, you'll get a chance to go hang out with me somewhere on this big, beautiful gem of a planet. Now, I wanted to mention this really quick. There was a picture of Rob Halford. Now, I'm wearing Judas Priest tonight. Rob's the singer for Judas Priest. And Rob's a good friend of mine. And there was a picture that went out on social media last month of Rob getting ready to hit the stage. He's backstage somewhere, but he's got a Dolly Parton t-shirt on, right? The Metal God, right? Rob Halford with a Dolly Parton t-shirt. And I went, I gotta get me a Dolly Parton t-shirt. In fact, I want that one. So I did my search and I got it. Yeah. So tonight, Rob Halford. Tomorrow night, Dolly Parton. That's what I'm talking about. All right, let's get straight to it. Tonight, Lon Strickler is with us, and we're going to be talking about the Chicago Mothman phenomenon, his 45 plus years of paranormal investigations. We're going to be talking about Mothman, but we're also going to get into some Bigfoot and, of course, winged humanoids. And now his blog, Phantoms and Monsters, has been around since like before I was born. I'm going to go back and say probably 2000, mid 2000s, somewhere in there. He has been on all of the shows, Ancient Aliens, of course, Coast to Coast AM, and Fade to Black. And his links and his YouTube channel are below. I would like to welcome back once again to Fade to Black, Lon Strickler, and he's right there. Lon, good evening, young man.
Hey, how you doing, Jimmy?
It's good to see you, man. 7 years. 7 years. You know what?
Yeah.
You look younger. That's the good news.
Well, I've been through a journey in those 7 years. I lost about 180 pounds, and right after I had bariatric surgery 2 years ago. And when they went in to, do my surgery, they found cancer. So I had the bariatric surgery, and then 3 months later, I had lung cancer surgery. So, I've been through it the last couple of years, but no, I'm feeling great now.
Well, you know what's funny? It's a great weight loss program, that cancer. Oh, man. I was just with, and I'm not making light of it, my brother and his partner, her name is Chris, and it's personal stuff. I don't want to get into it, but just, and I just visited them in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago, and she's fighting the big C, like lung cancer. And she's amazing, and she's so cool and everything. And we were sitting on their front porch, and I said, she goes, we're talking about the hair loss and the chemo and everything. And she goes, but I've lost weight. I said, best diet out there, that cancer. And we just all laugh. What else can you do? Right? Don't, and she's just strong. She's just really strong. And to make her laugh like that was absolutely hilarious. But yeah, you do look great, though. You look absolutely amazing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and so I kind of because of what you had said to me earlier, when we were doing the little pre-show chat, when you had said. You had just started the Chicago Mothman investigation right before your last appearance on Fade to Black, which is great. But I kind of want to start there instead of your first paranormal experience, Lon. What happened? and we'll do that. We'll do that. I promise. I'll throw you a softball. The easy question for me to ask, but this is my memory, and I'm going to ask you about this. My memory is there was some press that went out at 2011-ish or so about Mothman sightings in Chicago, and it was covered in the local news outlets in Chicago. And I remember reading that. I'm from Chicago, right? So it caught my attention. Is that what spurred your interest into this, or was there something else that got you going?
Well, I mean, as far as Chicago, yeah, the 2011 sightings, there were 3 of them in the end of, it was one in July, August, and September of 2011 in South Chicago. And that's kind of where it started at. But, you know, it kind of faded off. You know, it was something that happened and we took note of it. And it was, you know, it was in the press, like you said. There were 3 reports that came into MUFON. And we did our best as far as being able to find out as much as we could. But, you know, it kind of was left there. But I started getting back into it, of course, when the sightings started to accumulate in the spring of 2017. And these, you know, it was the first one occurred. It was reported to MUFON again. And it was kind of unusual because this sighting was in Oz Park, which is a little further north in the city. And the woman who had actually had the encounter was an attorney. Now, we didn't know this until we actually had to hunt her down and find her so we could talk to her. Mm-hmm. But she ran into it while walking her dog one night. And, you know, that description of the thing was very similar to what the Point Pleasant Mothman was. Insectoid wings, large insectoid wings. It was kind of tall. It had the red eyes, but it was kind of emaciated looking. And this thing took off and went up into the sky and then started screaming out, and it took off. And, you know, that was just the first one, but then we started getting others. A couple more came into MUFON, and then me and Emmanuel Navarrete, who lives in Chicago, and we started putting the word out that we were investigating these sightings. So MUFON kind of backed off on it, so we started getting the reports. And, you know, it's kind of been a steady thing since then. I mean, it wanes every once in a while, but in 2017 alone, we had up to about 50 sightings that we thought were legitimate sightings. So, but it's kind of kept going until then. It's spread all over the city. In fact, we've been taking sighting reports within a 250-mile radius of the city through all that time. So we've got sightings in Indiana, down south in Illinois, and up into Michigan and Wisconsin. So, yeah, it's been a pretty steady phenomenon, which is unusual, let alone, you know, you get a Mothman or a cryptid sighting in a metro area. But then it continues on the way it has. And
is there a consistency in the sightings?
Well, more recently, I'd say the last 5 or 6 years, the wing structure has been like that of a bat, anywhere from 12 to 15 foot in span. The either bat or gargoyle, however you want, the membrane type wings. The body type is very emaciated, dark in color. Sometimes it's shiny, like it's wet. It's got very narrow legs. The arms are sometimes attached to the wing and then sometimes detached from the wing. The head is kind of small. It's not built into the body, the upper body, like the Mothman at Point Pleasant. But I'd say in about 75 to 80% of the sightings, these creatures have the red eyes. And we also had them seen with blue and green and a number of other colors. So, but the whole investigation has just been, you know, it's just been so much different than most cryptid investigations because the witnesses, very forthcoming, don't change their story. Don't embellish on it. Sure, you're going to get some people who try to pull the wool over your eyes, of course. But for the most part, it's been, you know, the witnesses have been pretty steady. And it's all over the place. I mean, every social, economic level of individual you can think of has been citing these things. And it's just not in the city, but it's in the suburbs. And, you know, as far north as Milwaukee, as far south as around Indianapolis, Muncie, Indiana, and down into, I think the further south was in Illinois, Bloomington. So, yeah, it's been.
Bloomington is southern Indiana.
Yeah.
And so a little side note on all of this, which may be connected, maybe not.
Mhm.
And now I was born in Chicago, but I was raised in Indianapolis.
Mhm.
And when I was a kid in Indy, and I'm going to say right around the summer of 74, maybe 75, 74, like right in there. There was a ton, and it was covered in the news, of Thunderbird sightings.
Mhm.
And now when you're a kid, I'm 9, 10 years old, and you've got reports. There was film, right? Film was shot. There were some pictures that were taken. And you get this on the local news, what you and your buddies are doing. You're out running through the cornfields, man. You're looking for what a great summer that was. I never saw anything, but the connection between these humanoid Mothman type figures being seen in this area, could that be the same phenomenon that was being reported back in 1975?
It could be, but we have had Thunderbird sightings and we have had pterosaur type sightings as well.
Right.
And in Illinois, northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin are pretty well known for a lot of big bird, big avian type cryptid sightings. Even the indigenous people had legends about the Thunderbird, in that area, and other types of bird-like creatures. So that didn't really surprise me. But when we started getting these types of beings that somewhat similar to the Mothman, and look, when these sightings started to occur around the Chicago area, I wasn't even calling it the Mothman. I was referring to it as the Chicago Phantom, basically, because for the most part, they did not resemble the Mothman that most people know that occurred in Point Pleasant. We were getting a variety of body structures and types and characteristics. But the Chicago press, as they are, they're gonna start putting monikers on something that kind of suits them, and of course, Mothman kind of fit the bill for them. So I went ahead and went along with it, just not to confuse people. So we went ahead with the Chicago Mothman.
There is nothing better than the local Chicago news. They know how to pump a story, man.
Yeah.
And now I wanted to ask you this: how MUFON has always shied away from the cryptid, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Mothman. If it's not right, little green men or something in the sky, and that's their wheelhouse, and that's fine. But they have a method of investigating that they teach, and which is also great. But how does an investigation for cryptids, and in this case specifically Mothman, how do you approach it differently from MUFON, or do you use the same methodology?
Well, it's different. MUFON has got, like you said, they got their specific protocol. And most of it has to deal, for the most part, with just craft or lights in the sky. Sure, they will take an abduction case or an encounter case, but they scrutinize it to the point where, a lot of people aren't going to like what I'm going to say, but they scrutinize it to the point where witnesses lose interest and get away from them. And we have had the same thing happen with us because some of these cases were initially reported to MUFON. They discounted the sightings, and the witnesses got frustrated, so it came to us.
You had mentioned, for my clarification, we have you've got the Mothman statue, right, in Point Pleasant, and you can look at that and cop a pretty good visual. And then there is I almost want to use demon, the demonic side, right, with the bat wings, but the wings fixed to the back of a human, and you've still got 2 arms and 2 legs. You don't have the bat hands on the wings. You mentioned you're kind of seeing both.
Mhm.
When you think about this, what are you expecting? Are you expecting a bipedal humanoid with, bat web wings protruding from the back? Is that more common? That's what I picture in my head.
Yeah, that's what we're getting for the most part. As far as the arms and hands, I don't even know the percentage of the ones that are reported attached or detached. But each one that we have gotten with this investigation have had some type of appendage or legs that they were bipedal and they could stand on them. And that the body structure was more humanoid than insect. So, yeah, it was, like I said, a emaciated looking humanoid figure.
That scares the crap out of me. If I bumped into Lon, I'm being straight. I see a flying saucer land, some dudes get off of it. I'm like, cool, right? Let's go. Let's talk. Let's chat. I see Mothman. That's not a good day for me. That's simply not. And also, we're dealing with something that is typically very, very tall, 7-8 feet in height, right?
It can vary. It runs anywhere from 5.5 to up to 7 to 8 feet. I mean, it kind of varies. Quite frankly, and I don't even know if I told you about or talked to you about this when I was on the last time, but I had an encounter with a very similar type creature in 1988 here in Pennsylvania, and we have had winged humanoid sightings and encounters here in Pennsylvania. I live in South Central, so I'm near Gettysburg. So this occurred just north of Gettysburg, and the interesting thing about it was what I and 2 other gentlemen saw at that evening was very similar to what people are seeing in Chicago. Now, is there a connection to that? I don't know.
And so describe what you saw.
Well, you just want me to tell it what happened?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Please.
It was, I was living in Baltimore at the time, and I was out antiquing at the old Timonium Fairgrounds, and a friend of mine who I hadn't seen about a dozen years, who I had been in Boy Scouts with, he had his troop down at some type of get together, but I noticed him and we started talking. And in fact, when we were kids, he and I used to spend time on the Gettysburg battlefield. So, we saw a lot of different things. Well, because I was born and raised in this area. Well, anyway, we got to talking. We're sitting down eating lunch. And he mentioned to me that during the summer of 1988 at the old Conewaga Boy Scout camp, that some of the troops had been getting scared out of the woods while camping, that they'd be hearing screaming sounds. They didn't know where it was coming from. It was just scaring them, and they were packing up and leaving early. And it happened several times. So, it's another coincidence, I guess, but he had mentioned to me, he said, a friend of mine, another scout leader, and I are going to go up to Camp Conewago, and this was in October. So it was just turning fall. And we're going up there next weekend, and we're going to camp out and see what we can find out there. You want to go along? Well, okay. So I decided to go along.
Right on.
So I met them up there, and we tramped down around into the woods and set up camp that Saturday. No, it was a Friday evening. And, we set up. Nothing happened. Nothing was going on. We all had 3 separate tents. So, and then we went to bed early, got back up, and the next morning sitting around the campfire. And the other guy said, did any of you guys hear anything walking through the campsite? And I did. I thought it was one of those guys getting up to relieve themselves in the woods or something. I didn't know what it was, but, I didn't really think of anything. And look, there was nothing disturbed in the campsite. So what we did that day, that Saturday, we just went around and we're hiking through the woods, all through the state game lands, which are nearby there and other areas. We were out maybe 8 hours or so. We came back to the campsite. We didn't notice anything that day, nothing out of the ordinary. So we spent the evening around the campsite, around the campfire, just talking and whatever. And I'm thinking, well, nothing's going to happen tonight. I mean, this is the wild goose chase. Well, but anyway, I guess it was around 11 o'clock. We were getting ready to turn in.
Here we go. You were asking for it.
Yeah.
You were asking for it.
We're sitting there and we hear this loud scream come out of the woods west of us. And we didn't know what it was. I mean, there's a lot of wildlife out there, and wildlife makes a lot of different noises. So we didn't know what it was. Well, anyway, so we decided to, just stick around, stay up the night, and see what else happens. So I guess around, I don't know, it was around 1 o'clock, maybe before 1 o'clock, I got up to stretch my legs, and I walked out onto the trail. Now, the trail was just to the north of us, and the creek was on the other side of the trail. It was right along the trail. So I'm intuitive. So I pick up on a lot of different stuff. I've been intuitive all my life. And I'm out there in the dark, on the trail, and I'm thinking, something just doesn't seem right. And I mean, everything was going off. I mean, my hackles were raised. So I went back to the campfire, told this guy, look, let's grab our flashlights, go out onto the trail, and walk up and down and see if anything shows up. Okay. Yeah, we're not doing anything else, so that's what we're going to do. So we got on the trail back to back to back.
Lon, I've seen this movie.
Yeah, it is like a movie.
Yeah, I've seen this movie.
We didn't get 50 foot away from the campsite, and we all saw it at the same time, standing in the creek. Now, the creek in the fall was really low, but something dark and tall with something on its back was standing in the creek. But the thing we did notice was it had eyes that were projecting red light. And by the time we got the flashlights on this thing jettisoned itself into the air with a whoosh, and it let off a whooshing sound. And when it reached its apex, it screamed out. I mean, it was blood curdling scream. And then it flew off. We could hear it screaming as it flew away. Well, we all hightailed it back to the campsite. My buddy, he's not talking. He's freaked out. And me and the other guy are talking. And he said, did you notice any structures on its back? And I did. I mean, it looked like it had something on its back, which I think now were wings, because it kind of extended over the head of it. They weren't unfurled, but they were tall. And this thing did not go into the air with its wings. Well,
what?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is something that's going to come back with these Chicago sightings. So I decided, well, I'm staying up, but those guys, they weren't staying with me. They went up to the administration building and spent the night in there.
Smart.
Yeah. But me, I wanted to know what the hell it was. So, but nothing else happened that night. Now, I didn't talk about this for almost 20 years. The family knew about it. A couple of friends knew about it. But when I started the blog back in 2005, I decided to write about it. So in 2008, I wrote about it. And not long after that, I started getting people contacting me about seeing something very similar. But the one that got me the most was, it was two of them, actually. There was a gentleman who lived near the campsite at Dick's Dam. And he said, for 20 years, I've been hearing screaming up and down that creek, and I had no idea what it was, but I've been hearing it. You think that's what it was? Well, sure, it could have been. I don't know. But about a week after that, another scout leader contacted me and said, look, couple weeks ago, my troop and I were up at Camp Conewago. We were camping. It was a Saturday during the day. The kids went out on the trail like all the kids do. They're just up and down, nosing around. And they came running back to the campsite, screaming all bloody murder, saying that they saw a dragon. And he said, I thought they were pulling my leg. You know, they were serious, but I just thought they just misidentified something. And they told me, he said, do you think it could have been what you saw? Well, when he told me where they saw it, it was very close to where I had my encounter. So ever since that period of time, and the last sighting was about 5 or 6 years ago, we've had 6 other sightings along that creek. In other parts of that Conewago Creek, of people seeing a red-eyed, winged, humanoid-like being flying out of the creek or near the creek. And so, because of what I had encountered, it just seems so strange to me that I got so involved with this thing in Chicago. Now, is it synchronicity? I have no idea. But it just makes me think about it. It's like, and we've had other sightings as well in this part of the state. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Mothman will always think of John Keel and Point Pleasant for sure.
Right.
But I think that the sightings are not only across the United States. I don't think it's a geographic, centric situation, but I think it's worldwide.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, and the dragon reference I find very curious, and the reason why this is actually a question.
Mm-hmm.
Dragons. Let me back up. Dinosaurs were not discovered until the mid 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
That's modern history.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't realize that, right? There was nobody knew about dinosaurs in the 1500s, but they certainly referenced dragons for millennia. How many coats of arms, how many countries' flags have dragons on them that have been there for 1,000 years or 1,500 years? What is it that they were seeing? And not only in Europe or Northern Europe, but it's China, it's Asia, it's the Mayan, Incas, Aztecs, the indigenous cultures all across the United States have all done this reptilian, dragon, dinosaur, winged creature. What is it that they were seeing? And they all saw it. This was, it's a worldwide. Do you think that there is a connection with Mothman today to the dragon reference, right? That was actually said to you, and what's been going on around the world?
I think it's very possible. And we've had sightings worldwide. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the dragon genre has been around for 3,000 years. It started with the Zhang dynasty in China. Yeah, it's part of their culture, and it's part of a lot of other people's culture in the old world as well. And we still get dragon sightings. I had a dragon sighting in Chicago about 2 years ago. No, you
didn't.
Yes,
you
we did.
did.
Yeah, I didn't, but I had a witness that did.
Oh, you had a witness. I thought you saw.
No, I didn't see it.
But well, tell us about that while we're on the subject. What happened?
The gentleman, this was going on in, of course, all these sightings, and he wasn't really aware of the sightings. And that's that's another thing that's been going on. A lot of people that do contact us don't know anything about the Chicago Mothman sightings. So this guy and his neighbor were out working in their lawns. They were cutting grass and doing some work out in their lawns. It was during the summer, and I forget the neighborhood. I think it was North Chicago, but I don't know I don't remember exactly which neighborhood it was. But anyway, they were taking a rest. They were kind of sitting on the steps on the porch and leaning back, and they saw this big thing flying in a distance away from them. And he said, I looked at it and kept looking at it, and he said, you say, do you remember the old Sinclair Brontosaurus toys they used to give out to Sinclair gas stations?
That's right, the Brontosaurus Sinclair. Yeah.
Well, my uncle used to own one of those Sinclair stations back in the 50s and 60s, so I remember them. And I said, yeah, I remember those things. I had a couple of them. He said, well, that's what it looked like, but it had big wings on it. Wow. So I'm thinking to myself, well, that's not a Mothman, but that's sure as hell sounds like a dragon to me. So
there is something. I want your opinion, please.
Sure.
There is something about the northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, that border. Lots of lakes, lots of forests, lots of small towns, and lots of really cool campfire stories. And I've always thought, because that's right, when you grow up there and you've got your family and you've got your friends, these stories are everywhere. And it seems like there's got to be an origin to this with that part of the country. What do you make of that? To have Chicago, this is a metropolitan area. Right. North Chicago, which is where I was born in Waukegan, so that area, right there.
Well, we had sightings of Waukegan too.
Really?
Oh yeah, we've had sightings all up and down Lakeshore. Absolutely. Yeah, that whole area, that state line area between Illinois and Wisconsin, has a lot of phenomena. Well, of course, you talk about the Beast of Bray Road in that area, and we had several sightings in the Rockford area, up along the Lakeshore, up into Waukegan, up in the Racine, up the whole way up into Milwaukee. So yeah, this whole it's a regional phenomena. But
sure.
and Chicago's always been known for a lot of weird things as far as paranormal phenomena, but also UFOs. So, there's so much you can shake a stick at, but it's there.
Right. I posted in the chat a little bit earlier as you were describing the Chicago Mothman and what witnesses are reporting. Mm-hmm. And I just made a quick comment in the chat, childhood's end. And now that's exactly when I picture Mothman, I picture what Arthur C. Clarke wrote about. And of course, it's in the 3-part miniseries. And that image, immediately, some people will jump and say, hey, there may be an ET connection. Well, there may be. I would love your opinion on that. But here's the other part. Is it interdimensional?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. I think most cryptids really are. And that goes back many years to me, even with the Bigfoot phenomena. I think for the most part, now I think there are indigenous groups in certain parts of the world and here in the United States and North America, Pacific Northwest, around the Gulf Coast, down to Florida with the swamp ape, skunk ape, and into Texas and all. I think there are some groups there. There are some indigenous groups of something, hairy hominids or hominins. But I think overall that Bigfoot, cryptid canines, Mothman, winged humanoids, I think they are interdimensional.
That picture behind you in the frame.
Yeah.
Is that what I think it is? Yeah.
Right there? Yeah, that's the Chicago. That's the Point Pleasant Mothman.
See, that would scare the crap out of me. And when you go and read the accounts from all of the eyewitnesses, and I've done so many shows on Mothman where I've taken each witness and their statements and broke it down on the show many times. This is not funny ha stuff. It's not. These people were terrified. Mm-hmm. And it's a very a negative experience. That Mothman isn't, dropping daisies on the road, rose petals. That's not necessarily what's been going on typically. with the Chicago Mothman, is it also this threatening presence too, as well, where it's a negative experience?
Well, people are, they get a foreboding feeling for the most part. I think a lot of people are very familiar with the Mothman in Point Pleasant, where there's this theory about being a harbinger of disaster. Of course, with the bridge collapse and people associating with that with the Mothman. I don't know if that's true. I've got my doubts about that. But quite frankly, when we started really getting into this in mid 2017, I was literally getting phone calls 24/7 from just residents of Chicago wanting to know what the hell was going to happen in Chicago. People were scared. And, I tried to dispel that as much as I possibly could. And as far as we know, nothing has resulted that could be associated with that. But people are understandably upset about it. Many of the witnesses, when they would contact me, look, they would have their encounter. They'd use, I don't know what they would use to search on Google, but my name would come up or one of my associates' names would come up. They'd make the report to us. And then they don't know what's been going on, but then you tell them what's been going on, and then they give you the description of what they saw, and it's very similar to what others have seen. And they tell you, when I saw this thing, especially with the red eyes and the way it was flying without using its wings, and I'd say about 90% of the sightings have been of a creature that does not use the wings. I mean, it literally seems to jettison itself without any type of wing propulsion. Sometimes they see it, but it doesn't. But they said the overall feeling people get is a foreboding feeling that they're fearful about talking too much about it. And that's very real. There's a very real sense of fear behind this.
Now, I want to go back to that reference, and you said it also connected back to Chicago. Mm-hmm. Last year, here in LA, we had this flying dude around LAX, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this guy, well, I'm calling him a guy. I don't know what gender this thing was, but was cited a few times by commercial pilots in and around the flight path to LAX. Now, there are no, and I know this as a fact because I've tried to do it. They have like a giant Faraday cage around LAX. You can't fly drones. You can't do anything. Nothing. It's all blocked off, and for good reason, right? Okay, mm-hmm. So suddenly we've got a flying humanoid around LAX. No wings. Mm-hmm. And some said that it was some jetpack dude. Well, who has a jetpack and who would be flying that and how they weren't caught. But here's the trippy part. A couple of months ago, there was a missing person and a search for a body next to my house. And maybe you saw some of my social media posts about this. But I got wrapped up into this investigation with the sheriff's department. And missing body in a lake, right? That I frequent right next to my house. And so I'm out there one day, and they have this giant helicopter that they're searching with, and it's parked, it's landed, and I'm talking to the SWAT team and the pilot, right? And we're taking pictures and, doing all that stuff, selfies. And the pilot says to me, as soon as he finds out who I am, right? And he's like, dude, okay, all right. I said, you ever see anything strange? Right? Flying this thing? He's a sheriff's helicopter pilot, search and rescue. That's what he goes, no, but I was really looking for the jetpack dude at LAX, right? And he said that they were all talking about it, and they were all trying to take routes through that area, hoping to catch a glimpse of it. Now, it's eerily similar to your description, right? No wings, but still flying.
Yeah.
And he was never found. I'm not going to extremes here, but it sounds like it's interdimensional, and it sounds very similar to your sighting and to what's been going on in Chicago.
Yeah, it's possible, and I've had a lot of people ask me about that out at LAX. And in fact, I had a California highway helicopter pilot contact me about seeing one near Santa Monica about 3 years ago. Same thing. Yeah, he saw it too. So, I mean, he said I wasn't looking for it. He said, but it looked like a guy that was flying with a jetpack, but I just didn't see the jetpack.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I don't know what they saw. I don't know what people have been seeing or what the pilot's been seeing. We had pilots over at O'Hare see this thing too.
Yeah, the sheriff, the pilot.
I'm talking about in Chicago for the Chicago Mothman. We've had airline pilots, we've had security people, air traffic controllers, employees, cargo people. It's a whole bunch of people. And look, the powers to be at Chicago O'Hare are not happy about this whole thing anyway. I mean, they didn't like it getting out because, of course, and I think the reason behind it was because of what happened during COVID and everything being shut down. And they were just trying to get things back in order. And all these sightings start popping up around O'Hare. And they don't want people thinking, well, look, I'm going to take off or land at O'Hare and a Mothman's going to get stuck in the engine somewhere and cause us to crash. I think they were worried about that.
Well, the same thing with LAX, because a couple of those sightings, and there was like 3 or 4, couple of whoever this thing was at 5,000 feet.
Yeah, that's pretty high altitude for something like that.
Dude, yeah. If you're some backyard jetpack guy, you're not going 5,000 feet in the air. A mile?
Yeah.
No, 50 feet. That's anyway. Same thing. They didn't want that story breaking like it did, because we're talking about one of the world's busiest airports.
Absolutely.
And you don't know what's going on, and you don't have control of the skies. And these commercial pilots, they were seeing it on both sides of LAX. That was the other thing. It wasn't like it was in one specific location. But when those planes approach and you can see them, they're in a long line, going out to Palm Springs, right? They're all coming in from the east. And to see an object in your flight path at 5,000 feet that looks like a human, that's crazy. And that is dangerous.
Very dangerous.
And, very dangerous. And the sheriff, the pilot that I talked to, he said he's got an open mind, but they were all of his pilots and all of that, and everybody was talking about it and wanted to see it. There were numerous commercial pilot reports, and I think there was some air traffic control radio chatter that was going out to the pilots to tell them to be on the lookout for a flying human in the flight path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had a lot of people question me about it, and unfortunately, with what happened in LA, people didn't really give us much of a description other than it was something. It looked a little humanoid, but it was flying, and that's about it. I did ask people if they saw wings, no wings, so it was hard to tell what people were seeing. Now, we did have one sighting of a type of humanoid without wings up in Wisconsin. And in fact, we were people who watched the Netflix Unsolved Mysteries that was released 2 weeks ago, when they covered our story on that, our episode on that, one of those 2 witnesses who did see that thing were part of that presentation. So, yeah, that was a little different. That's the only one I think that we ever had of that. But that was a little bit different. But yeah, we've had all types of things seen.
Well, now let's go back to your sighting in the creek.
Mm-hmm.
You said that something was coming off of its back. Do you think that could have been? I don't know how clear of a look you got, but could that have been mechanical?
I don't think so.
A jetpack? No.
It was just. It was huge. I mean, from what we both saw, and it was quick. You know, this thing took off before we even got a real good look at it. But it was extending several feet above the head, so it was long, but it wasn't unfurled like wings, and it was pretty huge. I mean, and because we couldn't even tell the wing structure on it, as far as if it was membrane or any other type of wing or feathered wing or whatever. But we do know that it literally took off without using the wings.
And it whooshed, you said.
You heard a whooshing sound. Absolutely. The thing cutting through the air going skyward. Yeah.
Now,
yeah, that was very distinctive.
No broomsticks.
No witches, no broomsticks. No
witches. Now, there's another straight. You remember Carlos Castaneda? He was an author in the early 70s, wrote about good drugs.
Okay.
No, he didn't. But anyway, he was a writer in the early 70s. Anyway, really, really great writer. But he wrote about, he went down, I don't know if it was Mexico, if it was further south into South America, but he was up in the mountains with some shamans, right? And they would walk out to the edge of the cliff and fly like they were walking, okay, on ground, but there was no ground. And they could like run and out over the valley and turn around and come back. And he said when they came back, they were flying. And when they came back, they were exhausted, like they were running, right, sweating. But he writes about this in a nonfiction sense, like this is something that he observed and participated in. Again, without wings.
Well, you know, you probably remember about a dozen years or so with the flying witches phenomena down in Monterey, Mexico.
Those were good videos. I don't know what to make of them.
They were interesting.
They were interesting.
And I knew people who actually went down there and did the Ken Gerhardt in particular did some investigating down there. And, you know, he talked to one of the police officers who had an encounter with one of these so-called witches. But nobody really figured out what that was. I mean, that lasted for several months until it just stopped.
Well, and then we just, before we hit the break, another strange coincidence was Peru last year with the aliens at the local indigenous tribe down there in the town, described as aliens, right? And abducted one of the girls from the village, and they were flying through the jungle. And the military came down and said it was miners with jetpacks. Remember?
Yeah, we still haven't got the story on that one yet. I looked into some of that. I don't know what people were seeing, but the descriptions by the people in the village, they saw something. I mean, something definitely occurred. You just can't discount what they were telling people.
Oh, that video with the alien in the tree and they're shooting at him with the guns. Man, that's a pretty good video. That thing, it looked like, I don't know, what do they call it, pareidolia or whatever it is, where you're seeing, but that looked like something hanging on and looking at them and it was big. And it was right there behind the house with the roof or house, whatever it was. But the tree was right behind it, and that thing was looking down. That's a pretty crazy video. And those people were frightened. I mean,
they were freaked out.
Yeah, they were freaked out. They were freaked out. Again, do we just chalk it up to, just winged humanoids, and it's part of our existence? We just don't see them all the time for whatever reason, interdimensional, or they're just avoiding us. And maybe they're just misunderstood, right?
I guess. I mean, I'm hoping one day that we can kind of get a grasp on what this really is. But, the whole winged humanoid or flying phenomena of creatures, it's been going on for a long, long time. And, maybe as we get more into quantum computing, the technology increases, maybe we may figure out what's going on. But at this point, it's all speculation.
Do you have any theories?
Yeah, I think it's interdimensional. I think there are some things that happened at O'Hare. There's a cemetery at O'Hare, first of all, the Rest Haven Cemetery. And there has been a lot of activity around that cemetery that's just really hard to describe. But I believe there is if you want to call it a portal, gateway, or something around that cemetery where these beings are coming in. Now, I'm not saying that's the only one, because this thing has been seen all over the place. And but I think there has been something going on there. Now, what it is, what kind of dimension, is it linear to our Earth plane? I think it very well could be. I think these beings are corporeal beings. I think they're flesh and blood, or whatever the substance they're made of is. But I think they have the abilities to move in and out between our plane and where they exist.
It's there, and going back to Point Pleasant and also Chicago, were there UFO sightings at the same time as Mothman sightings, and were you ever able to make a connection?
There were at Point Pleasant. There was a lot of UFO activity around Mason County during that year period that the Mothman was seen most. Not so much in Chicago.
Really?
Even though Chicago is well known for a lot of UFO activity, the UFO reports around the Chicago land area actually decreased around 2017 up until recently, as opposed to historically. Now, there were some unusual UFO sightings during the same period of time when there were some sightings of these creatures. In particular, there was one sighting of two of these winged humanoids flying in a figure eight above a boat out on Lake Michigan, and then two greenish colored UFOs or UAPs were seen as well on the horizon. So is that associated with? I don't know. It could have very well just been a meteorite. I don't know, but that is probably the only sighting of the two phenomena at the same time that we've got.
I don't want to say last night. Over the last few nights, we've got the meteor showers are going on, right? So I live out here in the Mojave Desert, right next to Lockheed Skunk Works, and at night there's no light pollution, right? It's very cool, and I'm able to go out on my back deck. I've got two decks, but my upper deck, before I go to bed, I go out on the upper deck and just kick it in the chair, and and we've got the meteor showers going on. So check this out. And when we come back, I want to talk more about UFOs. So I'm sitting there last night, and I see in about a minute or two, 3, 4, 5 meteors, right? And it's so cool, right? So cool to see just people. And by the way, kind of threw me off, not going in the same direction. Isn't that strange, right? I always thought meteor showers are, going in what? No, they were. Anyway, so then as I'm looking up at this, I see this It was an aircraft, okay, because it had flashing navigation lights on it. 3 white lights flashing, pop, 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 like a triangle. And so, it kind of caught my eye, but I was looking for the meteors. All right. So I'm watching this crap, but it's low and it's right in front of me, and it just kind of catches my eye again. And the dang thing, and it's silent outside. Silent, no noise. This thing stops and reverses direction. Now, that caught my eye. And I'm looking at it, Lon, as I live and breathe. I'm listening for the helicopter rotors, right? I'm thinking to myself, that better be a helicopter, right? And it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing. It's dead silent. So I watched this thing. I sat out there for 30 minutes, and I watched this thing go back in 30 minutes. So much so that I got bored and went in the house. It was still there when I went in. It just went over, stop, come back, stop, on a dime, come back this way. Never quite flew over my house, but close enough that I could see the 3 lights in a triangle setup. I'm not saying it's a black triangle. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the 3 lights were flashing like this, and then go back over, right in this general area of about a mile, like this box, and it just stayed right inside of it, stopping, no noise, nothing, not a, or nothing. And like I said, I got bored. But I did see, and then we'll take a break. But this was the cool thing of the night. I saw a bright orange meteor enter the atmosphere and just went straight across the sky, big chunk of sky, just straight across, and then went out. But isn't that when it becomes a meteorite?
Yeah.
Right? Meteor is outside. Meteorite is inside the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I think that's what it was. So that thing crashed somewhere. That's all I'm saying. But it just went right across the sky, and it was bright orange, and it was just beautiful. And then I got up and went in the house and let this thing. I don't want to say what time it was. Lockheed was probably test flying some anti-gravitic thing. I don't know, man. No noise. I was going to go get Flight Tracker. I was going to get on my phone. I never did, just to see if I could, and it's watch its path and if it had a transponder. But again, I don't want to give away, if they were testing something, I don't want to say what night it was or what time. That's not really cool to do. But it was fascinating to see this thing stop and change directions. It was really cool. Not a UFO. It was ours. It had, unless ET is conveniently for our safety using navigation lights. Which would be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice.
It's courteous. Our guest tonight, Lon Strickler, and now we're talking tonight about Mothman, his investigation specifically into the Chicago Mothman and other winged humanoids, and we're going to jump into some UFOs when we come back. This is Fade to Black. Our guest, Lon Strickler. I'm Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I want to invite you to come to Alaska with me on the Contact at Sea cruise. It is this September 6th through the 13th, 2024. We are on the largest ship in the Pacific Ocean. That's right, the Ovation of the Seas. It's an amazing cruise, and a ship this big is so much fun. We've got lots of activities and lots of great speakers. We are leaving from Seattle to Sitka, Alaska, Skagway, Juneau. We're going to end the cruise in Victoria, BC, and arrive in Seattle on September 13th. We've got a lot of amazing speakers, including we've got Seth Showstack, Scott Walter, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Sheehan, Daryl Sims, Mas Adi, Vivian Chauvet, Grant Cameron, Geraldine Orozco, Misha Johnston, and Melanie Aguirre, and a whole lot more. All you have to do is go to divinetravels.com. You can also go to contactatsea.com. Both are going to take you to a full event schedule. You can check in, look at the boat, get things ready to go, and maybe get a cabin with a balcony. That's what I'm talking about. Come see the whales. Come check it all out. Let's go to Alaska this September 6th through the 13th, 2024 with me, Jimmy Church. Now, when you head to divinetravels.com or contactatsea.com and get signed up, you know what? Use my name, Jimmy Church. I'll see you there September 6th through the 13th, 2024. Let's go to Alaska. This is Jimmy Church. Please visit and explore Egypt this October 3rd through the 14th, 2024 with Billy, Elizabeth, myself, and very special guest and the #1 podcaster in the world, Sean Kelly. It's simple to do. Just go to forbiddenknowledge.com and click on upcoming tours, or click on the link below. We'll see you there. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's fade to black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again,
rivermoonwellness.com.
All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest, Lon Strickler. And we're talking about Mothman and winged humanoids tonight. And here's the thing. Lon has been writing his blog, Phantoms and Monsters, since 2005. And Lon, it seems to me, and I think that this is a general assessment that is agreed to by all parties, okay? That it seems to me that the Bigfoot community and the cryptid community wants to be left alone, and they don't want UFOs brought into their side of the fence. The UFO community wants cryptids and Bigfoot to be brought into the UFO conversation. Is that an accurate assessment?
For the most part, yeah. But I think people, the more younger people that get into the whole thing, the research, the investigates, I think they're keeping an open mind about including all phenomena together. Because quite frankly, when we do any type of investigation, very rarely is there just one aspect that's going on. There's usually something else coming in, or we find out later that there's something else involved. The paranormal, the supernatural, the unexplained, they all are tied in to some degree. So I think people are becoming more open-minded for the most part. You get people that just want to stick to one thing and they don't want to even talk about anything else. But I think it's getting closer now.
With I think everything overlaps.
Yeah, I think
ghost, UFOs, life after death, quantum entanglement. Quantum computers, the multiverse, right? Dimensions, parallel world, all of it. It's, man, when one domino falls, right, it's all going to come crashing down. And I think that we're going to find that we're talking about the same thing about a subject that we just don't understand. And when I find, I like everybody to have their own opinion. I listen to everything. I'm learning just like everybody else. But I sometimes am taken aback when somebody says, no, that's not the way it is. It's only this way. I kind of back up because in this world that we're in, you kind of have to have an open mind about everything, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You got to take every bit into consideration, especially in recent years. When I first started doing this, it was kind of cut and dry and you kind of stuck to one thing. But as time has gone on, me being intuitive and getting into other facets of the paranormal, you soon start to realize that there is a connection. Absolutely.
Well, the cryptid aspect of it seems that you can find a town, a community, pick the time frame. You can go back in history where they all have folklore and mythology and a story about something that sounds very similar to the phenomena that we're investigating today.
Yeah.
And whether it's Slender Man, right, or the Men in Black, leprechauns, or little green men, it seems that, right, devils and demons and Mothman, right, that they didn't have the right words or knowledge to apply to it. So a label gets slapped on it and the folklore continues, right? But we could all just be talking about the same things that you and I are investigating today.
Yeah, the nomenclature and the monikers all change, but for the most part, a lot of it's very similar to what others have experienced over time.
Now, and for you, now this is where I want to go backwards for a second. Did you have a crazy family growing up? Did you have that crazy uncle?
No.
Or you didn't have any interest in the phenomena?
The only thing, my immediate family, no. I grew up in a very conservative Lutheran family that didn't even take the paranormal in consideration, so I was pretty quiet about everything I was experiencing. I did have one uncle who lived down in North Carolina who ran a still up in the mountains that got destroyed by Bigfoot. But other than that, that's the only thing that I ever have been associated with as far as my family goes.
That's actually pretty good, though.
Yeah.
And did it force you or allow you to maybe open up your mind a little bit and your eyes too?
Well, of course, when I kept my mouth shut, nobody was questioning me. So, this was, I had my first real encounter with something when I was 9 years old. That was back in 67 or 68, around that period of time. It was on Gettysburg battlefield. I had an encounter. It was like the battlefield opened up to me. I was right in the middle of the battle for about 30 seconds. At that, I knew as a kid that something was going on with me. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I kept it all to myself. But at that,
wait, Lon, pump the brakes.
Ahead.
Hold on. You don't get to just say the battlefield opened up around me and move on. Like,
well,
okay. So what are you describing? What did you see? What happened?
Well, I used to spend a lot of time on the battlefield as a kid. I would get on my bike and I would go out there during the summer, especially. This was the area, for people who know the battlefield. It was in the Valley of Death area, which is between Little Round Top and Devil's Den and Wheatfield. I was on my bike, and I don't know what made it occur, but all of a sudden, it was like a big television screen opened up in front of me, literally. And I heard gunfire, smelled gunpowder, saw soldiers. I mean, the whole 9 yards was going on. It was like I was right in the middle of the battle. It lasted, I would say, no more than 30 seconds, and then just vanished. It was that profound. I mean, and that was the first time something like that had ever happened to me. So at that point, I knew something was going on with me. But of course, being 9 years old, you couldn't explain that. You didn't know what to think. And I was actually scared to even mention to my parents, because I knew they wouldn't understand, or they'd think something was wrong with me, because nobody talked about that stuff back in the 60s. So, so that's how it started with me. And at that point, after that point, I just continually started experiencing bits and pieces of things and sensing spirit energy around me and seeing things that I don't know what they were, shadows, ghosts, or whatever you want to call them. But I was noticing a lot of different things happening to me. And, it was like that the whole way through school and through high school. And in fact, I started actually doing paranormal investigations my senior year in high school. And it was all word of mouth. I mean, you talk to somebody back in 75 and 76 that told them you're a paranormal investigator, or if you were looking into paranormal phenomena, you got that real weird look, like you're crazy, And this is before a time when, people had, in Gettysburg in particular, people talked about the ghost and all the phenomena of Gettysburg, but it wasn't like it is now. I mean, it's mainstream now. It's something that people just did not really want to talk about. That's how it started with me.
You bring up such an interesting point, because when we consider things like pterodactyls flying in the sky, right?
Mhm.
Or Bigfoot or Mothman or Gettysburg, where these events possibly are recorded, right? And then some of us have the ability, you're at the right place at the right time. Maybe it's a portal, maybe it's a time, some vortex thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
But suddenly, when somebody says they've seen a pterodactyl or Bigfoot or Mothman or ghost on the field of Gettysburg, that quite possibly they're seeing something real at that moment that was recorded and you have access to it, but then it just goes away.
Yeah.
Like, when somebody talks about a pterodactyl in the air, come on. I mean, stop. No, you didn't. Well, maybe they did, and we just don't understand the phenomenon behind it.
Yeah, I think the whole time slip thing there's something to it. We really can't explain it at this point in time. I mean, as far as the technology or the actual phenomena itself, how it shows itself. But, after you hear so many accounts from people who are telling you about something that they believe they saw or experienced, you got to listen to them. I mean, and when you get hundreds and thousands of people saying the same thing, there's something to it.
I had the audience has heard this story many times, and I tell the story a lot because it's absolutely unbelievable. I can't believe this stuff comes out of my mouth. But I was 9 years old in Chicago, in Waukegan, by the way. And I was born at Great Lakes Naval Station, and you know where that is, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So, I'm going to give you the short version of the story. Crossing the street from my apartment where we lived to our elementary school, Clearview Elementary, to the playground to play with my friends. It's the summer. And something catches my eye. I'm 9. I look up and I see the Hindenburg. Okay. And it's low, it's big, and it's just flying across. And I can see people in the gondola, and I chase it. I chase it across the playground for like 5 minutes until it disappeared over the trees. I saw everything, the ridges, the engines. And what do as a 9-year-old boy? I draw this thing for months. What are you doing? Oh man, I'm drawing, what I saw, and I did this forever. Now, the memory just kind of always stuck there. I never really thought about it too much until a couple of years ago. And I'm sitting here in the studio and I'm working, right? Researching, writing, doing some stuff. And I thought about that. And all I did, innocently enough, Lon, was I was like, I wonder what that was. 1972 over Chicago. Maybe it was the Super Bowl. Maybe it was, it was something, I don't know. But let's see what rigid airship, and I thought it was like the United States Navy. It was over Chicago in 1972. That's my Google search. And I'm hoping I'm just going to get an answer, right? And check this out. The answer, which I ended up doing a heavy deep dive into this, is there were no rigid airships in the world since 1938.
Yeah.
None. After the Hindenburg crash, Zeppelin Company went out of business. United States Navy had 3, the USS Ohio, the Akron, and the Los Angeles. 2 crashed. One crashed. One crashed and was dismantled. And the third one was completely dismantled after the Hindenburg crash. Now, what did I see? Right? What did I see? What did I see in the sky? Time slip? I don't know. Right?
You saw some type of residual of its presence, just like people talk about residual hauntings, and it can happen with inanimate objects as well.
When I read this, and then I did a ton of research into this, and to find out that indeed there were none, right? None.
Mm-hmm.
The hair, I freaked, right? I had electricity went right through my body, like, whoa, wait a minute here. Okay, now I need to try to figure out what went on. I didn't see my world change, right? Like suddenly there was old cars, or, I'm in black and white or whatever, like I went back in time. No, my friends were still there. My apartment was, so I don't know. I don't know. And it seems very similar to these other sightings that other people have had over the years. It's very similar, and it's very brief, right? I looked for all kinds of news reports in 1972 for Chicago. Nothing. Couldn't find anything.
It's amazing some of the things that, people report to you seeing, and you sit there and think, and there's got to be an actual explanation for this, but in most cases, it really isn't. I mean,
now, they're again always connecting the dots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say that I've had a little taste of everything. Now, I haven't had the Whitley Strieber, Travis Walton abduction experience. I haven't had that. That I know of, I should say, right? Asterisk right next to that statement. But it seems that the phenomenon does follow you. And when you have, I want to go through your abduction experience. And is it that it has found you, the supernatural, the paranormal, the unexplained? Do you feel that way, that you have had just a little bit of everything in your life, and that's not coincidence?
No, I don't think it's coincidence. In my case, I think it does follow me around. I think there's an energy that is always following, but just shows itself on certain occasions, if the conditions are right. And I think the encounters and the incidents that I've experienced during my life can be an actual reason as to why it happened. I never really understand why it happens, but it does happen. And I was very reluctant to even talk about a lot of it, but as time is going on, it's just something I decided to open up about. When I first started looking into the paranormal, especially when I first started writing, I just kind of kept back on it, but as time went on, and it seemed to get easier for me to answer questions about it. And for the most part, for other people to hear my story and to help understand what they have encountered. Because I have worked with a lot of people who have had a lot of different things happen to them over the time. So is it cathartic? Yeah, I guess it is for the most part, but it does happen. And I've known people who have had a lot of things happen to them they just can't explain.
I have an open mind, and I love, one of my favorite things to do is just to talk to people and hear their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do, and I'm sure you do the same thing, is I'm listening for the little things that only I know. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't talk about it on the air. I don't talk about everything, and I don't go into great detail about my stuff, because I want to hear from everybody else, and I need it for my own confirmation, because I sound just as crazy as my guest. Right? I do. But that doesn't change my experience. And when I get those little details, right? Somebody slips and says something that I kind of freak out a little bit about it, but I'm also comforted knowing that the world just isn't what it seems. And I'm just trying to get to these answers, just like you. Do you look for those same things when you do an investigation? Those little,
absolutely.
those little nuggets, those little gems, those little gifts.
There are a lot of times when I will talk to a witness or experiencer, and they will mention something that just hits home. And there have been times when it's almost like a recall, something that I really never really remembered until they said something about it. And it's like, wow, yeah, maybe, there's something that was there. Maybe there was more to it than I actually thought. But that does happen. And look, I talk to people every day, I look at it at this point, like I said, being cathartic. It's something that has not only, they look for assistance or answers, and I talk to them, but it helps me as well. And I've been lucky like that, to be quite honest. I mean, I feel blessed to have been able to experience not everything, but I think I've been blessed for the most part to be able to experience some things. And if it helps others, fine.
I haven't seen Bigfoot. I haven't
have
had that experience. I haven't seen Bigfoot. I've seen Bigfoot prints.
Yeah.
That I've seen.
Yeah.
And actually that kind of freaked me out a little bit. It was, I didn't expect the physical reaction that I had to it.
Nobody ever does.
Whoa. Yeah.
Nobody does. I mean, nobody knows how they're going to react to seeing something that is just unfamiliar to them. And especially something that they never believed actually occurred. It's, it's amazing when people contact you to tell you a story like that. And you get the impression that they saw it, but they really don't believe they saw it. And they're just looking for confirmation that, well, maybe I did see
it. You hear it from, and I'm sure this has happened to you hundreds of times. You hear it from the least likely person, right? You'll be talking to your mom's best friend in the kitchen, and just out of the blue, never talked about UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever, but then they'll say something crazy, like, yeah, we saw a flying saucer when we were, do you remember Thanksgiving, 20 years ago? Remember that? The flying saucer in the backyard? You're like, what? Wait a minute, what? And I have this happen all the time. And they put that in a box somewhere in their head, put it on the shelf, and they just don't talk about it. But they'll whip it out and surprise you. This happens a lot, doesn't it? People don't talk about it in public.
Absolutely. It does. And that's one thing that really encourages me when I'm talking to somebody and they're telling me something, or they got a question about something, say it's something paranormal that's been going on in their home or with their family or something. And I can literally sometimes talk to somebody and get in my mind's eye what is really going on. And when I blurted out, well, did this, and this happen? Or what was this? Or who was this? It's like, how did you know that?
Right.
You know, and that does happen a lot with me. I don't understand it. I don't. But it happens. My kids never really liked when I would say something. And I knew they did something, or I was able to see or really get an idea of what they did. And yeah.
Oh, so no secrets. No secrets
Very few.
in the Strickler house.
Very few.
2 nights ago, this is on Saturday. What's today? Tuesday. So 3 nights ago. On Saturday, I had a friend come over, Jordan Ziff, guitar player extraordinaire, amazing guitar player. And he comes over with his producer, Chris. And we're sitting on my back patio, downstairs on the back patio. And I'm sitting in one chair. Jordan is sitting in a chair facing me. There's a coffee table in the middle, and Chris is on the couch and his patio furniture, and his back is to my house. But the glass door is open with the screen sliding door over it. Makes sense? In other words, the door is open to the house, but the screen door is closed. Okay. So we're just sitting there talking at night, right? And this is what happens on All That I Love. The two of them jump and look at my glass door. I said, what's going on? They go, something just thumped in the house. That's what Jordan says. Chris goes, I heard it. It was loud. I didn't hear it. Right. But the two of them, and they're both looking in the glass door. They're expecting to see something or somebody in the house. Now, I have cameras and motion detectors that go off, right? All around the house, inside the house, outside the house. Nothing was activated. And I showed it to him. I said, okay. And I showed him where all the motion activators are inside the home. And I said, but I have a ghost. And you know what their reaction was? Oh, okay. All right. And we went back to talking. As soon as I said ghost, they were like, all right, cool, whatever. Okay, let's move on. And we jump back into the conversation. But that's where I think society is today. And the younger generation, they're just like what you're saying, Lon. They're totally open-minded. Went from burglar or intruder or stalker or danger, right, to ghost. And went to ghost, temperature went down. They were just like, okay, all right, whatever.
Yeah, and the people, young people getting involved with the paranormal now are more open-minded. You can see it, and so, even by the questions they ask you, because they expand so much on it. That's why I like talking to younger folks about who are interested in getting involved with any of this stuff, and their questions are very intriguing for the most part. And but it's not, like I said, it's not cut and dry. It really isn't. There's a lot of, and they seem to be experiencing a lot more things, or they're more open to talking about seeing things or experiencing things as opposed to the parents or older people.
Do you think it's the media? Right? Movies,
I think it has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the paranormal became mainstream because of the media for the most part. I mean, it started back in the 60s for with Benny Barty Hill and, the Gimlin film and all that, Patterson Gimlin, and, In Search Of and all the shows that were kind of came beyond that and just kept snowballing to what we're at now. I don't say I necessarily buy into all of some of what's presented all the time, but it's out there. And if you're looking for answers, it's out there for anybody to find now.
The kids today, I think their DNA has been fundamentally altered. And I'm not saying that in jest. I'm not saying that to be funny. They they have grown up in a different environment than you and I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it just goes without saying. Of course, the internet, but it's everything else. We literally had 3 channels of black and white TV. We had a corded telephone. We had to get up to change the channel, right? And now we can laugh about that today, but this new generation that has grown up with technology from the future. I mean, Dick Tracy, Jetson stuff is just part of the world, and I think that their DNA has been fundamentally altered from this point forward.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that's absolutely, I mean, a possibility. What it leads to eventually, we don't know, but I
don't know.
Think,
superpowers, man.
Well, that might be too. Yeah.
I think their DNA's been fundamentally altered.
Yeah.
I read a fact. This is about 2 years ago, and it was a press release, and it was written up and published in a medical journal. That it's like, I think the number in the developed world, 9 out of 10 newborn children, 9 out of 10 newborn children in developed countries learn how to operate an iPad before they learn to speak the words mom and dad. Tell me their DNA is not altered.
Yeah. Well, I have seen that.
Have you seen the monkey? Have you seen the monkeys use Instagram? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that.
Oh man. Oh. Go watch some of those videos.
Huh.
They can swipe and stop and watch a video and watch it and react to it and then move on, stop, go, watch the video and move. It's like, wait. And I saw a video the other day. Now think about this, right? DNA being altered. I watched a photographer, nature photographer. He's got his SLR, his DSLR, and he's taking pictures of chimpanzees, right? Okay, he's in a cage. Snap. And then he turns the camera to the chimpanzee and lets him look at pictures of himself. And that chimp took his finger and started swiping on the photographer's camera, looking at pictures of himself and reacting to it. I saw that video 2 days ago. It's like Planet of the Apes. Right? The DNA's been altered, man. There's no turning back. It has been altered. Now, I wanted to go back to your abduction, and we went sideways. That's part of having a wonderful conversation. Was your abduction experience physical, or was it something that was recalled later?
It was physical. I mean, I knew when I came back, I knew something had happened. It was really strange. It was there was a lot of things that had happened before the actual abduction that that led up to it. It was actually 2015. My wife had cancer, and for whatever reason, and she was diagnosed in January. For whatever reason, I started seeing owls. I was seeing references to owls. I was hearing about owls. I was seeing living owls. It was really bizarre. When it all started, my colleague, Butch Witkowski, he and I were talking about, I would tell him about it. It was like every day I was telling him about a reference to an owl. Well, as time went on, around midsummer, my wife she was spending, she was sleep in the bedroom. I would sleep out in the living room because I didn't want to disturb her because, she was pretty sick. So, I saw something in my living room, and it was these 3 tall gray beings. And I woke up one day and they were standing right beside my recliner looking down at me. These things were like 8-9 foot tall. I knew they were there, and then they just vanished. A couple weeks later, I saw them again, but they were on the other side of the room, the living room, and they disappeared. So I don't know what's going on. I'm wondering what's going on with, what had happening, but I continuously saw these owls. It kept going on and on and on. So in November, my wife, she was in intensive care. She was dying. And my son and I were at her bedside her last night, and we knew she didn't have long to live. So what we did, we drove back home from the hospital. I got out. It was at night. I got out, and in the tree in front of my apartment was this big white owl.
Wow.
And it's hooting and hollering and carrying on. It went on for like an hour. And then it stopped. And when it stopped, I got the phone call that my wife had passed.
Mm.
So about a week later, I was out in the living room. I had fallen asleep. I was watching TV. I had fallen asleep. My cat was on my lap. He acts up, and the next thing I remember is I'm standing in a room, and I'm looking out this window, and I see planets and stars and other craft and stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm being shown what I assume is an historical reference to Egypt, basically. I'm seeing, references to Egypt, and these 3 beings who I had seen previously were standing to my side. And we're communicating not by voice, but I'm asking questions, and then they're projecting it to me. I never, I talked to them, but they weren't talking to me. And they were showing me references to, actually it was the 18th dynasty.
Really?
Amenhotep III.
Yeah.
Akhenaten. And they were trying to explain to me, and I'll never forget, they were trying to explain to me that Akhenaten was related to Moses, and that Moses was actually the Prince Tutmos, who was the son of Amenhotep III, was cast out.
Really?
That's what they were explaining to me. So
now, I'm not an Egyptologist. I play one on TV. But I study this a lot. This is my thing.
Yeah.
This is my world.
Yeah.
And 18th dynasty, and that period right there, was big change in Egypt. Lots of things happened. That 100-year period was crazy town. And for them to say that to you, I'm going to go back and do some reading about that tonight. That's very interesting. Did you know anything about that? Were you understanding what they were saying?
I did, because I'm a history nut. I always have been. And I actually wanted to be an archaeologist, quite frankly, when I was growing up. But I never really thought about the Exodus or anything like that. The whole Exodus story goes into the 19th dynasty, and Ramses II, are according to the Bible, or supposedly according to the Bible. But this is what they were showing me. Now, I don't know how true it was. I did write briefly about it in my book, Alien Disclosure, but I didn't really elaborate into a lot of it. But yeah, and when I don't know when it ended, but all I do remember is waking up and it's light out. I'm in my recliner, but I'm in my underwear. I don't have any other clothes on. So I don't know what happened. So is there a connection? And people are talking about the messengers. I had talked to Mike Cleland about this. He and I have talked about this extensively. And he believes that there was a connection there somehow. But this all happened before he even wrote his book.
Yeah, that's right. You said it was 2015.
Yeah.
I think his book came out around that time.
Around that time, yeah.
Yeah, around that time. That the owl frequently, and I've heard this just like you over and over and over again, that it's a screen memory that's inserted for you to overlay the memory of the experience. And so you don't remember the experience, you only see the owl. Now, and you said, and your wife and all of that. And I went through that with my father 3 years ago too, as well, bedside stuff and brain cancer, and very harsh thing to go through. It's the cycle of life. But for you to, what was your wife's name?
Vanessa.
So you're going through this with Vanessa, and these owls are popping up. It seems like there was a string of events that were going on during this time with Vanessa that you don't know or remember, and those owls are there. You think the owl memories are real, that you did see the owl in the driveway, that the owl was hooting, but there was something else going on. I'm not saying this is, but it sounds very close to what other people have talked about. And of course, what Mike Cleland writes about in his book.
Well, there's something else that happened too. My grandmother, 2 months later, after my wife passed, my grandmother passed. She was 103. So I came up here to Pennsylvania. I was living in Baltimore then. I came up here to Pennsylvania for the funeral, and I was talking to my dad, and we were discussing about me moving back up here and all, back to Pennsylvania. And he said, there was something, and I never had talked to him about this thing with the owls. He said, there's something that really strange that happened to me the night your grandmother died. I was laying in, because they lived in an apartment above my father's business, and my grandmother lived in the house beside it. And they had these big walnut trees out in the yard. And my father said, there was a damn owl out there in the walnut tree the night your grandmother died, hooting and making all kinds of noise. And I had never seen an owl around here all the 80 years I've lived here. And that came right out of the blue.
I said this to Mike Cleland the last time he was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I can say as fact what you just said. I have never seen an owl. I don't think I've seen one in a zoo, let alone out in the wild. I've never seen an owl, not in person. I never have. And isn't that strange?
It is strange.
I have never seen an owl. I have so many friends. Oh man, I see owls all the time. I want to see one. Right? But no, I've never seen an owl. I can only imagine how majestic that is. Hawks, eagles, whatever, I've never seen an owl.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I can't explain. I probably will never, be able to understand, but it did happen. And it was.
Have you seen since Vanessa passed?
No,
And that week and so forth, have you had more owl experiences since then?
I have never seen an owl since then.
Trippy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Has can I ask you? Well, I'm not. Yeah, you can't really stop me at this point. Has Vanessa come back and said hello?
Yeah, she's been around.
Yeah,
she's been around. In fact, I do my show here, and she shows up back there in that hallway every once in a while. I keep having people tell me that they see Vanessa back there, or my buddy Butch. He passed away about 2 years ago.
Oh, Wachowski? Yeah.
Yeah. They show up during the show.
Man, okay. So I'm glad you didn't say that at the beginning of the show. Because I would not have looked at you once, man. I'd be looking in the background like everybody else.
Yeah.
Because I had that happen. My house is haunted. I don't give a crap. It's just, it is what it is. I don't know what's going on. I live alone and I don't want to freak myself out. So I've just kind of accepted it. But just like that doorway in the background that you have, right? So same thing happened around the corner down the hallway here. I have another studio in the back, a music studio with drums and amps and guitars. But there's a bathroom there outside of it. And the door is angled. It's not flat to the wall. It's angled. So when you go into the bathroom, you look in the mirror and you can see out of the mirror into the door, just like the door is over your shoulder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go in after the show, Lon, as I live and breathe, I go in the bathroom and I turn on the light and I'm looking in the mirror and and this freaking entity just walks right. And I see it in the room, right? In the mirror. And I jumped back and I screamed. I screamed like I was 5 years old. Ah! And I fell backwards into the shower against the door. And I come out and I turn on the hall light. The switch is right there. And I go, and of course, there's nothing in there, right? There's nothing there. And yeah, what do you do with that? I'm alone. I don't have a witness. It's just your crazy uncle story. But I can tell you this, those lights stay on now in the hallway. I don't turn them off.
Yeah, well, that's my life. I mean, stuff pops up here and there with me. And
that's cool, though. Vanessa, does Vanessa have a signal that she gives you? To let you know that she's really there?
No, I mean, when she first passed, it took years for her to even show up. But every once in a while, I get an indication that she's around, and it's just very subtle stuff. But
it's her.
I know it's her.
Yeah. After my mom passed, it's been a minute now. It was probably 2015, 2016, so maybe 8 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. She lived in Florida. And so I flew out with my brothers to Florida, and I come back. And my mom, when we were kids, when I was really young, 5, 6, 7 years old, she was into all that stuff, man. Eric Von Daniken, Ouija boards, automatic writing, Edgar Casey, and just she was a pretty cool mom. And so if anybody was going to come back and stand at the foot of my bed, right, it was going to be her. And it never happened. And she still hasn't. But you said it took a couple of years for Vanessa?
Yeah, it took at least 5 years.
Yeah, so maybe there's... okay, all right. I kind of chalked it up. I want your answer on this, and then we'll say goodnight. I think I chalked it up with my mom, was that she just checked out, and she's just enjoying. She kept on going. She's not, you know what I mean? She's not interested in coming back and hanging out. Did you ever get to that point with Vanessa? Like maybe it's not going to happen, but then it did?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that she didn't, because she was very spiritual. She really was. I mean, we were like a tandem together, and we did investigations as well together. So she knew what was going on with me. And I thought, I thought she would definitely be coming back, but no, it took a while.
Yeah, remember Houdini made that promise, right?
Yeah.
If it's possible, I'm your guy, right? if it's possible. Lon, I miss you, brother, and so great to have you back on the show. I look forward to the next time that we have you on. And tonight we talked about a lot of different things, but we'll get you back and we'll stay focused on one subject. But just all the best to you. I can't stop looking at. I haven't seen Vanessa yet, but
I've been looking too, honestly. But no, I didn't see anything show up.
Lon, you're the very best. Where can everybody go and check your? I've got your YouTube channel.
Just go to phantomsandmonsters.com. It's it's the blog, and the radio show is Phantoms and Monsters Radio. We do a Friday show. I talk about my cases and such. People send into me, and about everything I do is I present on there. So
enjoy the rest of your evening, my friend.
You too. You take care.
Thank you so much. Lon Strickler. Great conversation tonight. Thank you so much, Lon. And Lon's links are below, and phantomsandmonsters.com, and also his YouTube channel are all right there. I want to remind everybody, tomorrow night we have Michael Brown with us, and it's going to be all paranormal all night long. With that, I'll see everybody tomorrow night. All I've got is go back Lee Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.